Cooperstown is the father of baseball. He will fire the first shot in reply from Sumter. The bombardment will continue throughout the daylight hours. Sumter suffers some damage. Some fires break out in the woodwork of the barracks. And by late afternoon, in stormy weather, arriving off Morris Island, the channel leading him to Charleston Harbor parallels the coast of Morris Island, and then passes between Sumter and and Sullivan's Island, and into the roadstead of Charleston Harbor, which is known as Rebellion Roads, but long before the Civil War it got that name. And when the Baltic arrives, she's unarmed. She has supplies aboard her, but only one ship is there, the Harriet Lane. About dusk, arriving will be Pocahontas and Pawnee. The real heavyweight, Powhatan, is at Fort Pickens, sent there by this other expedition that's being fitted out by Secretary of State William Seward. Lincoln probably later will say, well, Pocahontas, Powhatan, what's the difference? Lots of difference is. So, the first night, they plan to land men at night. The three tugs don't show up, so everything is snafu'd. The tugs are to run the supplies in, but they don't show up. Powhatan, the one that can fight her way in, doesn't show up. And heavy seas prevent them landing any reinforcements or supplies that night. The bombardment resumes the next morning. Some of the Confederate guns had kept firing their mortars during the night. This time, Sumter begins to take a beating. The Confederate morale, the Confederate are getting on target. Heavy fires that are impossible to quench break out in the woodwork of the brick barracks. The flagstaff is knocked down. Fires are burning toward the magazine, and Anderson worries there'll be a tremendous explosion. They remove the powder from the magazines, roll it out into the water, and it floats around. Meanwhile, another real troublemaker, Louis Ringfall, born in South Carolina, but now a United States Senator from Texas, puts out from James Island in a small boat with two blacks and a sailor. As he rows out, he sees the flagstaff go down, but he doesn't realize that they've taken a handspike and are putting up another flag. If you're inside the casement there, you're suddenly looking out, and you can see this bearded guy looking in at you. It's Senator Wigfall. Wigfall waves his handkerchief. He comes in. Meets with Anderson, and Anderson says, I'm willing to surrender on the same terms that I proposed, that I be allowed to march out with the honors of war and salute my colors. Wigfall, who is there on a mission of his own, says, good, I accept. But he's not representing Beauregard. Beauregard's people now arrive, Chestnut, Chisholm, and Lee. Well, we don't really agree with that. We're going to, well, Anderson says, my flag is up again. It's up on the flagstaff, and we're ready to start fighting you again. Well, they said, well, let us go talk to Beauregard. So they go back and talk to Beauregard, and Beauregard says, give him the same terms we offered originally. He marches out with the honors of war and salutes the flag. So, in the bombardment, 4 men have been wounded on each side. At 1 o'clock the next day, on the 14th, the garrison marches out on the parade and then proceed to fire a 100-gun salute. That's 100 shots out of one cannon. Honors of war. As they're firing the 50th round, there'll be some smoldering lint in the bore from the previous round. Home! And you have 2 men going to be killed. One will die that day, the other one the next day. But the only killed are going to be when they fire the salute. They quit firing the salute on the 50th round. A boat will take the garrison out. The Confederates are ecstatic. Sumter has surrendered. Beauregard's a hero. The news reaches Washington on the 15th. The Confederates, you now notice who fired the first shot. On the 7th day of January, Mayor Fernando Wood of New York City had said, I'm going to take New York out of the Union and create a free city. But the firing on Fort Sumter to the north is going to be the same situation that happened on the night of the 7th day of December, 1941. The North is united. It's united, the North. The South, Lincoln then on the 15th will call on the several states. That includes Virginia, North Carolina, those 8 slave states, as well as all the free states that don't have slavery, for 75,000 militia to serve for 90 days, to put down combinations too powerful for the ordinary judicial process. Pennsylvania will oversubscribe their call by 15,000 men. The 8 slave states ain't very happy. And although prior said 24 hours. On the evening at dusk, on the 17th day of April, Virginia, by a vote of 88 to 66, the convention votes Virginia out of the Union, subject to a referendum of the people on the 23rd day of May.
I hate to stop you on this.
What?
I hate to stop you on this, but I have a few other questions.
Yes.
It's already getting past
Right.
6:30.
One of the other things I'm looking at is Maryland being a border state and a lot of
All right,
battles
Maryland.
going on there. How did that affect the people?
All right. First off, we'll deal with the 4 border states that leave the Union. Virginia is out of the Union officially on the 23rd of May, but for all practical purposes, on the 17th day of April. Arkansas out before May arrives. North Carolina on the 7th of May. And the last one to leave will be Tennessee on the 8th. Maryland there'll be riots in Maryland. As, of course, Maryland declines to provide any troops. But on the 18th, a trainload of Pennsylvanians leave Harrisburg. And by the evening of the 18th, they're in Baltimore. They're rocked, stoned, spit upon in Baltimore, but no blood shed. But on the 19th, the 6th Massachusetts will arrive about noon. They detrain at President Street Station. And it's 1.5 miles to the Camden Street Station, where the Orioles play their game. Some of the troops march from President's to Camden. Some of them go on cars pulled by horses. And the Baltimore mob attacks. 4 Massachusetts people will be dead. The soldiers fall back. The soldiers will fire back. At least a score of Maryland rioters will die. And in your Maryland, my Maryland, Patriot Gore runs in the streets of Baltimore. And it's the rioters who are the Patriot Gore. It's not the Massachusetts troops. So, and the railroads coming into Baltimore, Wilmington, coming south from Harrisburg, the bridges are cut, destroyed. But they're going to bypass Baltimore. Union troops will be taken to Perryville, Havre de Grace, loaded on ships, and brought to Annapolis. And then they will move on the railroad from Annapolis to Elk Ridge. And by the 25th, bypassing Baltimore. Union troops under Benjamin Butler march in to Federal Hill, place cannon on Federal Hill. They'll arrest the mayor of Baltimore, chief of police, declare martial law, and members of the legislature that may be looking toward secession will be arrested. And the legislature will adjourn and meet in friendlier climb for the Union in Frederick.
I'm going to interrupt you right
So Baltimore, Lincoln cannot permit Maryland to secede. He will defy the Supreme Court.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. Mr.
Okay.
Boggs.
I wanted to
Because
ask.
dinner is waiting, and we have
Yeah.